Pietro Pazzi. I spent 30 years as an executive.
Right. That is my persona, which is I call the big shot, the executive that's polished and performance orientated and really very focused on what needs to get done, prepares well, knows a lot, wants to share a lot, and has a lot to share, a lot of wisdom, a lot of insights. So those videos that I've produced up until now are packed with nuggets. And I encourage you to have a look at those. Yes, their delivery sucks. And that's why I've asked the guy to step aside, and I'm going to step in and tell you a little bit about my experience of what I've learned and some deep learnings that I would like to share with you as well. So in the interim, he's going to learn or find a new way of delivering. And I'm going to share the experience. And the very first one is this identity shift I'm going through the last couple of years. Exactly from the executive, the successful executive for 30 odd years, lived the dream, traveled the world, really on top of his game, very high performer, got the job done, felt time to take a break about 7 or 8, 9 years now ago. Stepped into something completely different, really let go of that kind of living. Went to an island, owned a dive and surf shop with my partner for 4 odd years, and then moved to an experience in Africa. But a lot of stories there, and I'd cover those in another series. Bottom line is, returned to Germany to consolidate, and believed that I would step right into any role I wanted, because here I am, big shot. I've done it all, I've delivered it all. Nobody's going to say no to me. Had a couple of bites, botched the first interview with a consulting company. Just completely. I needed to get my mindset back in gear again. So I did a lot of studying, a lot of reviews of what I knew, what's the latest, the greatest, and relearned everything. Sent out plenty of CVs, probably 100 plus resumes, and had no bites. Nothing happened. Crickets. I thought, what the heck? Is it my age? Is it that I'm not trained in Germany? Is these people just don't want me here? Is this all this migration shit and I'm not a native German? Is it because I took such a long break? Is it all of that put together? And so that tailspin, I went into a tailspin. Man, I thought, what the heck? Crisis 2.0, I call this. I had a crisis 1.0 when I was in my 20s, went bankrupt, a business that I ran. Then another video, another day. This one is deeper, because I had this identity that I've identified with for so long, and something is shifting. So kicking and screaming, I fought against that shift. And I got angry. I got frustrated. My self-worth dropped. Shame. I mean, like, crikey. I mean, what now? I mean, now I'm nobody. I'm nothing. Nothing. What's going on? And that's where the questioning starts. And I started looking a little deeper. And so my question to you is, are you feeling the same? Are things just not going your way anymore? The strategies that once worked don't. The confidence you once carried that just feels hollow. And underneath that, the frustration and that quiet fear of, does nobody want me anymore? Do they not acknowledge who I am anymore? Am I not worth anything anymore? And maybe the next set of questions, is it my environment? Is it the people? Is it my timing? What's going on out there? Is it me? Is something in me changing? And those are very important questions. And I'm going to tell you how I worked through this identity crisis in this video. Hi, I'm Pietro Pazzi. So the question we're going to be working with today is, who am I if the identity that used to open doors no longer opens them? That is where the real work began. Or that's where it begins, for some of you. For me, it began. Most people think identity is simply who they are. But often identity is the role that worked so well for so long that we stopped noticing it was just a role. For me, one of those roles was that big shot guy, the executive, the man who pushes, achieves, solves, delivers, flies around the world, living the dream, and knows what he's talking about. And to be fair, that part of me had real value. It had knowledge, experience, drive, wisdom even. But it also had entitlement. When Germany didn't welcome me back in the way I expected, that part felt isolated. It was angry at the German business world, angry at Germany for not recognizing me. But underneath the anger was shame. And underneath the shame was fear. And that's often how many leaders or people would respond to the beginnings of a transformation. The visible reaction is frustration, but the hidden wound is identity. For example, a leader loses influence, sells a company, retires from a big role, gets pushed aside, or simply realizes the old performance formula no longer works. And suddenly, the question is not, what's my next move? It is, who am I without the old proof? And that is the first move, recognizing the identity. Don't shame it. Don't worship it. See it, because what you cannot see will keep running you. So the second thing I learned was that transition has a messy middle, a real messy middle, very uncomfortable. The old identity is dissolving, but the new one hasn't quite landed yet. In alchemy. Now, alchemy is, I find fascinating. Of all the models I've known over the years, transformation models, change models, I found that the 7 stages of alchemy really offered me something very close to what I experienced. So I'm going to make a movie on that if you're interested. So let me know. So in alchemy, this is close to what is called Nigredo, the blackening, the dissolution. This is where the stage where the old form breaks down before anything new can be formed. It feels like failure from the inside, but it may actually be reorganization. In my case, I started by trying to update myself in obvious ways, as I mentioned before. Business analytics, BPM, digital tools, AI. I even learned German to a freaking high level. Things that make sense on paper. And some of that was useful, but it didn't fully come alive. Then another thread appeared. I'd always wanted to write a book, so I began writing. Yes, I did a bit of research. How does one write? I mean, I read a lot in my life. How does one write? How does one bring across a message with impact or with truth, but something that lands for the person that's reading it? I just started. And to be quite honest, I think there was still a part of me that says, fine, if you don't want to employ me, I'll show you what I know. Not exactly enlightened, but it got me moving. Then a book on psychosynthesis leadership coaching caught my eye. Now, this is where I started lighting up, because I trained in psychosynthesis in my late 20s after that first crisis I had, which I'll tell you about in another video, as I already mentioned. But back then, I wanted to become a psychosynthesis therapist, but that path was out of reach for different reasons, which I'll probably touch on in another video. Now, decades later, that thread returned. And that is how life works. It's definitely not a straight line. It's more like a spiral, and probably a bumpy spiral. Something you touched years ago returns, but this time it's more alive, there's more context to it. One is more ready. So that messy middle is where one listens very differently. It's not about how do I get back to who I was. It's more about what is trying to emerge right now. The third shift is probably the most important. I had to disidentify from the part of me that was panicking. In psychosynthesis, this is a powerful idea. We are not a single fixed personality. We have parts: the achiever, the critic, the frightened one, the wise one, the rebel, the one who wants approval, and the one who resents even needing approval. The problem begins when a part takes the throne and calls it me. So instead of having I am finished or saying I am finished, I began to see, hang on a minute, a part of me feels finished. Instead of I am rejected, it became a part of me feels rejected. Now that sounds like a small linguistic shift, but it is not. It creates space, and in that space, choice returns. That is where meditation helped me. Journaling helped, writing helped, studying helped, not as clever techniques, but as ways of staying close to what was actually happening. Over time, I saw that an outward self-actualization cycle of achievement, role, status expansion was giving way to a more inward self-realization kind of cycle. You know that spiral concept? Less of how do I prove myself, more what is true right now. Less how do I get chosen, more what wants to be lived through me right now. Now this is not passivity. It is a deeper kind of will, not forcing, listening, choosing, acting from an emerging center. Now this is an important part. This inner work did not simply make me feel better. It began to change the shape of my life. Because eventually something started to emerge. Not all at once, not neatly, but clearly enough to follow. I stopped treating the lack of a corporate job or a role as proof that I was finished. I began to see it as evidence that life was redirecting me. Writing became more serious. It wasn't just one day I write a book. It became serious. I actually sat down and started writing. I showed up, thinking deeply, putting decades of experience, failure, leadership, psychology, spirituality, and reinvention onto the page. That work led to 2 books being published by Turner Publishing in the US. They went out this year. And there's more in the pipeline. And then there's that coaching thread that I mentioned earlier that I returned to. But this time I was approaching it, particularly the psychosynthesis aspect, not as a young man trying to understand himself after a collapse, although that's still true right now in a different sense. But also I was approaching it as someone who had lived through many personal changes, changes in business, bankruptcy, executive roles, divorce, reinvention, island life, creative work, and this identity shift right now. So I trained seriously. I became a certified leadership depth coach, and I'm about to be EMCC accredited in a field that feels deeply aligned with who I am now. Not performance coaching in a narrow sense, not just helping leaders push harder or individuals push harder, but depth coaching. The kind of work that asks, what pattern is running underneath the behavior? What identity is overdeveloped? What part of the person is trying to emerge? What deeper truth wants to be lived, not just understood? That feels like the next expression of my life. But I'm not presenting this as achievement or as a polished success story with a neat little bow at the end of it on it. I am still in transformation. I sometimes describe my current phase as the butterfly has come out of the chrysalis, but the wings are still wet. That's the honest place I am right now. There's no form now. There is direction. There is meaning. But there's also tenderness, uncertainty, and the patience required to let the new identity strengthen before trying to fly too soon. And maybe that's the real point. Transformation is not just the moment of leaving the old identity. It is also the long, quiet work of learning how to inhabit the new one. So, what can you do with all this today? Here's a simple practice. Take a page and write these 3 questions. First, what identity in me feels threatened right now? Not what problem, what identity? The expert, the provider, the successful one, the needed one, the strong one, the one who always knows. Secondly, what is this part trying to protect? Every part has a reason, even the difficult ones. The angry part may be protecting dignity. The controlling part may be protecting safety. The achiever may be protecting worth. Third, what is trying to emerge that I keep dismissing because it doesn't yet look practical? Early immersion rarely arrives as a fully formed business plan. It often arrives as a quiet pull, a book on the shelf, a conversation, a reoccurring idea, a strange sense of relief when you imagine a different way of working or living. Be open to what life is showing you. Follow that thread. Be courageous, not reckless, but respectful. One small experiment, one conversation, one page written, one course explored, one honest admission. The new identity does not usually arrive fully dressed. You test it into being. So, if you're in that phase where the old identity no longer fits, and I know how exposed that can feel. It can feel like rejection. It can feel like failure. It can feel like the world has moved on without you. But sometimes what is really happening is more subtle. Life is not taking your value away. It is taking away the form that your value used to hide inside. The old self was not wrong. Mine helped me build, lead, risk, learn, travel, and achieve. But it was not the whole of me. And maybe that's the deeper truth for you too. You are not only the role that worked. You are not only the title you held. You are not only the strategy that brought you success. You are not even the part of you that is frightened right now. You are the awareness that can hold all of it and still choose the next truthful step. And age has nothing to do with it. 32, 52, 62, 72. Life can still ask, are you willing to loosen who you are so that what is truer can come through? If this spoke to something in you, I'd love you to subscribe, because on this channel, we'll explore personal transformation, leadership, identity, inner work, transition, and what it means to live and lead from a more deeper inner truth. And if you're a senior leader navigating your own transition, perhaps outwardly successful, but inwardly sensing that something deeper is asking for attention, you can explore my leadership depth coaching at pietropazzi.com. You'll also find a link there to book a 30-minute complimentary exploratory chat with me, and both links are in the description as well. And perhaps that is where we begin. Not with fixing you, but with listening carefully to what is trying to emerge.